Hey everyone, welcome to Pass or Play. So today we have Rich's Season 1, Episode 2 through Episode 6. So we open with Nina and Simon going into Flair and Glory offices for the first time. Nina's basically taking the lead. Simon is kind of just being supportive, helping out, when he can, and basically when Nina asks, kind of letting her take the lead. And one of the first things we see is Maureen, in the last episode, the first episode, she got that $1 million pound um, paycheck from Stevens, Will, and she basically tells Nina, he was very generous to me, so I'm just gonna kind of take some time off, see what I want to do, with the rest of my life, enjoy this money, basically. And Nina's like, no, please, this place better than anybody, you knew Steven better than anybody, how he worked, can you please stay, give me a little bit of time, a couple months to get kind of acclimated to the new role and position, and then you can go, of course, after that. And Maureen decides, she's like, sure, I'll stay for a couple more months, to wait for you to get kind of acclimated and for things to kind of settle down a little bit. And Nina, she ends up having like this all employees meeting, basically letting the employees know to bear with her as she kind of, looks over everything. She's not trying to fire anybody, just basically bear with her. Some people feel a certain kind of way, but it is what it is. Her and Simon have majority shares in Flair and Glory, and this is what Stephen had in his will, as far as her being CEO. So either way, we end up going to Claudia and Gus, who's seeing the top probate lawyer in London, as far as trying to find a loophole in Stephen's will. And basically, the lady tells them, if anybody tells you that they can get around this, she says they dotted every I, every T. Stephen made sure that there's no loopholes, and then you have the video, which is airtight. It doesn't look like he's under stress, like somebody, got a gun to his head, and he's just like saying that because he's scared to die or something. It's like, so basically this will is ironclad. There's no way to get around this, and if somebody else tells you otherwise, they're trying to rip you off. And in the last episode, in the scene where they're at the table and Claudia starts sliding fruit and stuff across the table because she doesn't like the outcome of the will, they stated that Claudia will receive appropriate income. And we find out in this episode that the appropriate income is £20,000 a month, which in US dollars is $24,600 a month, which, for me, I would take that. That's great. I mean, you could either have a nice condo, you could, buy a house, renovate it. You could do a lot with that, but that is not good enough for Claudia. Claudia's like, who's going to check me, boo? And apparently, her and Sheree, they got Steven's will saying, this is how much I believe is appropriate for you, 20,000 pounds a month. And Claudia just feels a certain kind of way. I'm not going to say that Claudia doesn't love her kids, but and she's like, I'm doing this for you, for your legacy. At the end of the day, Stephen had all of these children, though he married her or she stole him or whatever. He has other kids, and they're just as much as entitled to a piece of that, as her kids that she had with him. And even though I'm not saying she doesn't love her kids again, but I just feel like she wants to have unlimited income, unlimited kind of spending power. And it's like, no, you have to have a budget. She just wants to be able to go in and everywhere in this ladder card, which is nice. I ain't saying I wouldn't want that either, but that isn't everybody's reality. Even if you are a part of a multi-million-dollar company, people still usually have parameters on how much they can spend or how much they will spend in a month or a year. But, Claudia doesn't seem to really care for that. And, instead of talking to Nina and Simon and kind of, figuring how they could best work, within the confines of the will, they're just trying to go behind their back. But of course, too, if that happened, then we wouldn't have a show. But, it's like, just work together. Either way, um, right off the bat, Nina does ask Andre, who's the CFO, to give her, all the latest company financials and reports and business dealings. She asked Maureen to make sure that she gets access to Steven's email and calendar and things like that. And right off the bat, the first kind of problem is that there's this online group where customers are complaining that basically they're losing their hair or their hair is falling out from one of the products at Flair and Glory. And we end up finding out that the president of production, for this particular conditioner, there was a couple bad batches in the formula, and instead of not having it go out, he let it go out. And then of course now we have this online group where people are basically posting pictures of them losing hair, of their hair falling out. And the guy who does it, again, the president of production, Emmanuel, he doesn't seem to care. He kind of, he has like a cocky attitude. Steven would be okay with it. And he was like, well, I'm not Steven. And then the product ends up getting recalled. And, it's kind of demanded that they end up compensating these customers, for the money that they spent. And then at the end of the day, Nina's like, you got to go, Emmanuel, you're fired. Of course, people feel a certain kind of way because this is her first day there, but he really dropped the ball. Not only did you let this go out knowingly that it was a bad batch, but it caused all this trouble. And so yeah, she fires him. And we also see that when this does happen too, she asks Gus, who's the deputy CEO, to kind of look into it. He ends up feeling a certain kind of way because Nina asked him to do a role that's part of his position and job. And so he ends up trying to interview at other companies to get another position, and they're basically like, the only reason you have your position is because of nepotism, because it's a family business. And basically he gets declined by like 4 or 5 different people, and he ends up getting drunk and feeling a certain kind of way. And even though this is going on, Alicia comes in, and out of seeing all the stuff that's going on online, she comes in and she basically comes in to try to help Nina and try to kind of lower the waters of all the complaints that are going on online, which is really cool. And in this episode too, her and Simon, they basically be like, you know what, since we fired Emmanuel, we need a new president of production. Alicia, why don't you do it? You know all the products. You have your online, you have your blog where you're sampling products, giving reviews and different things like that. Why don't you do it? At first she says no, and then towards the end of the episode, she ends up agreeing to take on the role of president of production. And then also to Mama Oyen ends up calling Nina like, you need to come back. You need to leave them people. They're crazy. Leave those people alone. They're nothing but trouble. And Simon ends up reminding Nina, we both have lives back in the U.S., but he has clients himself. He has I can't remember, is it his boyfriend or his husband? But either way, he's like, I got a man. And they're also trying to select the surrogates. And, he's like, we have IVF plans, to have this baby that we're planning to, prepare for, waiting on him. And, basically he's like, we both got things to do, sis. And, she's kind of like, I'm here, I'm doing what I need to do. And then also in this episode, we see that Andre, again, he's the CFO. And then we also find out, too, that Claudia basically got Gideon, who was the original CFO of Flair and Glory. She got him ousted from the company and had Andre put in there, so Andre would kind of be her eyes and ears on the goings and comings in Flair and Glory. Of course, it turns out too that they've been having an affair while Steven was alive, but even after he did, they still kind of screwing around. Andre comes off kind of sleazy, like a fuckboy. Comes off like a snake too, because it seems like he's setting things in motion to kind of screw over Nina and Simon later, setting up like, at some point I need you to come and do an investigation on Flair and Glory, not right now, but later. He sets up something like that with some kind of either reporter or investigator. And then we also see in this episode that Maureen is deleting emails and calendar records from Steven's, personal login without telling anything to Nina, which is suspicious because we don't even know why. And then We also found out too from Gideon that Stephen sold some of the shares of Flair and Glory to a secret shareholder, which means Nina and Simon don't own all controlling shares in Flair and Glory. And if this secret shareholder is found, they can join forces with Claudia and and his three other and her kids for majority control of the company. And also, too, at the end of the episode, basically Nina is looking at the numbers and she finds out that there's $20 million, 20 million pounds, because we're in London, so missing from the company finance. And then, so in episode 3, we see that Claudia and Andre is getting their freak on. We also see that Nina is using this app to meet strangers, and she meets this guy at the gym, and they basically get it on at the gym. And we also, the main like storyline for episode 3 is this Face of Flair event, which Claudia wants 500,000 pounds for to start to basically plan it and get it started. And Nina lets it be known like, no, anything over 50,000 pounds needs my approval, and we are 20 million pounds in the hole. I don't know where this money is. I'm trying to find it. And did none of the Claudia, Wanda, Gus, Alicia, they have no idea. They had no idea that this money's missing. She talks to Andre, the CFO. He's like, Steven did whatever he wanted to do. No matter what I told him, he did what he wanted. And Nina's like, it was your job to watch the finances. She said, that was your job. You dropped the ball and you didn't say anything. And, Andre's kind of just like, Steven did what he wanted to do. And she's like, okay, well, if I found out you had anything to do with this, you'll pay for it, whatever. And then Gideon basically lets Claudia, Wanda, and Gus know that they need to control their spending habits, that they're living well over their means, and they need to basically have a budget. Which, yes, especially Claudia. I mean, even though in the last episode, in episode 2, we do see Wanda getting her card declined for the first time and not knowing what to do with herself. um, and they do also, her and Claudia, they end up finding a safe in Steven's office, and they don't end up telling Alicia and Gus because they want to find out what's in the safe. Is there money? Maybe there's another wheel or whatever. And but either way, in this episode, Gideon's like, you guys need to control your spending. But it does turn out that Alicia is, out of all the three of them, she is the best one with money. She owns her own flat. She paid off the mortgage. She's been investing her allowance into different investments. The blog that she has, she gets endorsements and things. So she's been using that money basically to take care of herself. And two, we keep seeing that, again, Claudia thinks that Nina is the one who's doing this, or is trying to screw over her and her kids, even though it wasn't Steven's will. So she's trying to find ways to undermine Nina, only really ended up probably going to screw over herself. But two, as we go back to this Face of Flair event, um, previously, again, Claudia has been selecting the models and planning the event and everything, but all the previous models have been light skinned, biracial. And though, Flair and Glory is a black owned company, with all the faces of the Flair being, light skinned, it's like, well, you're only considered beautiful if you have a white mom or a white dad. And so the question is, well, one is colorism, and that seems to be, at least based on the selection of all the models that they've selected, because they've not selected someone with, brown skin. Shout out to NDRE, but they haven't selected anyone with just, just dark, skin, and everyone's mixed. And, there is a little bit of questioning with the brand itself. And so Nina basically decides, like, I'm going to be the one to select the model for the Face of Flair. You've previously selected all these light skin models, and it affects the perception of what people think Flair and Glory stands for, which is true. there is beauty in all shades of I mean, now different cultures, different races, there is light and dark. So you have the light and the darker skinned, and sometimes, they talk about, the Europeans favoring lighter skin, lighter complexions. They used to talk about, like, back in the day, if you didn't pass the, lighter than a paper bag rule, then you were deemed to be this way. But I mean, there's beauty in all the shades of all the races and of all the colors. Of course, colorism does exist, unfortunately, but I think that the episode did a really good point of pointing it out. They did do it really quickly, but in the end, Nina does end up selecting Yinka, the darker skinned um, model. She's really pretty, really beautiful, and even though in the episode they do show that the lighter skinned models feel a certain kind of way, and they end up leaving out the Face of Flair event. And then also in this episode, we find out that those files that Maureen was deleting and calendar events that she was deleting in episode 2, she had done it under another employee named Davina. And Davina ends up getting escorted out by HR because IT found out that the deleted files came under her login, and that she's basically is going to be put under investigation. And then also too, later it comes out that Davina has been sleeping with Andre. So Andre is gonna so HR is gonna look into Andre because he's been sleeping with Davina. It's just connected. And then also too, um Andre's also sleeping with Claudia, so he's just kind of getting around. He may even be sleeping with other people in the office. But either way, in this episode 2, at the Face of Flair event, Nina ends up calling Maureen out, saying, I know that you're the one that basically logged in with her information to delete those files. And then Maureen's like, no, I know what you're thinking, but it turns out that Stephen was dying of cancer. He went to Zurich, Switzerland to see this renowned oncologist, and that's why I deleted the information, because I didn't want people to know. And basically Nina's like, okay, and she's gonna kind of do more investigation to find out more on that later. But then also too, at this Face of Flair event, Davina comes to the event, and basically lets it be known to the people at the event, the press, the family, that Andre and Claudia have been sleeping together. And people taking photographs, and Gus ends up getting up and punching Andre. So of course now it's like World Star, whatever the World Star equivalent of is in London. It may be the same thing because the World Stars everywhere, but it ends up kind of overshadowing the fact that Yinka, the darker skin model, has become the Face of Flair. And it seems like that's the only narrative now, the thing that's out there about Face and Flair, until they actually release the photos of Yinka as the Face of Flair. And then it kind of, I guess it goes a little bit even. So now it's the Yinka is, the new Face of Flair, plus you also have this story with Gus fighting Andre, the CFO, because the CFO is sleeping with Claudia, the widowed wife of the ex, dead CEO Steven. So, and what else? And then too, so Alicia starts the role of the president of production. We also find out that she has dyslexia, which I thought that they went over really quickly. So she has dyslexia, and I just thought that with her family having millions of dollars or whatever, being this multi-million dollar company, did they spend to get like a tutor, or get her extra help to kind of get that rectified. I don't know if dyslexia is something that you continue to deal with throughout your life, but I know they have, tools, and they have methods that you can use to make it easier for people who suffer from that. or who have to deal with that. So I thought it was interesting, but they kind of went over it so quickly. But either way, she takes on the role of president of production. Nina basically lets her know, well, get yourself an executive assistant who can look over the emails and different things, pull out the pertinent information, the most important information, and give it to you in a Word document or Excel or PowerPoint, whatever is the best and easiest way for you to read it, and then get a product assistant to help with the product, the emails and different things like that, and basically do the same thing. So, delegate to make it easier for yourself with your dyslexia. Don't let your dyslexia undermine your confidence in the ability of being president of production. I thought that was really cool. And then also, too, in this episode, it might have been the last episode. I'm just kind of going over everything, but Gus, there's a really cool moment with Gus and Alicia where he gives her company cards, saying president of production. He puts it in this gold plated card holder. And then we find out that actually out of the three, Alicia is the oldest over Gus and Wanda, but because she was a girl, she was overlooked. And they kind of groomed Gus because he was a boy to be, CEO of Flair and Glory. And, at the end of the day, yes, she has dyslexia and, she's a girl, but she actually is the oldest. So even though technically it should be Nina and Simon, however you want to look at that, but the fact that she was overlooked for Gus, and she said, that kind of sucks. But I think it's cool now that she is getting her chance to shine and get this, has this position and role in the company. She did this without having a role and position before, with the whole fallout of the online group. She came and helped without getting paid or whatever. So I mean, I thought that that was a cool scene with her and Gus. And I will say, all of the siblings support each other. Now, Simon and Nina were off in the U.S., and then Wanda and the other two, they were in London. But individually, they're all close and they all support each other. Yeah, they argue. Yeah, they have their quits and quats and whatever, but they are supportive of each other. So I think that's really cool. Um, And we also too have the storyline with Gus continuing to deal with the cop who pulled him over when Stephen was in the hospital. Hopefully trying to recuperate from the heart attack, and trying to find a way to basically get the cop back. He did try to go the right way and put in a complaint, but the police station basically kind of just said that the cop acted accordingly to protocol and procedure, which is a lie. He didn't. But now he's hired a private investigator to try to find something on a cop to either get him fired or reprimanded or whatever. So we have that ongoing line with Gus, and we also that ongoing storyline, plus also the storyline with him liking this bartender Sasha, and instead of just asking her out like a normal person, he ends up sending this expensive gift to her, this expensive bracelet to her job, and basically ask her out on the card. She ends up coming down to Flair and Glory and basically returning the gift, saying, talk to me like a normal person, ask me out like a normal person, don't just be sending me gifts, out here costing, thousands of dollars. She said, you're going to get me robbed with me walking around with something that expensive. And two, we end up seeing him throwing her gift in the trash, which, earlier in this episode, Gideon's like, save your money, be smart with your money. And he's still, that's the thing, though. I guess if you have money like that, you can just throw away stuff, gift like that. But I'm like, I take the gift and, sell it or something. Just give me the receipt so they don't think I'm like trying to pawn the stolen merchandise. But either way, just throwing away thousands of dollars of gifts like that, that just shows that he has no respect for money. He's just like, it's money. So that did say something. But either way, too, we also go to Luke and Wanda in this episode where it automatically seems that like Luke is using Wanda and Wanda's kind of allowing it. They don't necessarily seem happy. They just seem kind of complacent in that relationship, but they're not married. Luke is kind of offended that when he comes into the room, that when Wanda's talking to Claudia, that they stop talking, but it is personal family business. They're not married. They're just dating, even if they've been dating for a long time. Some things is family, personal business. And two, we also find out in this episode that Stephen changed the will 6 months before he died, and he added Nina and Simon. But before the last 6 months before his death, the will had only Claudia and her children were named in it. So we find that out from Gideon.